Ladies, gentlemen, and deities of all ages, welcome back to another video. Today, I'm going to break down and tell you everything you need to know about all of the recruitable characters in this game. I'm going to talk about their growths, I'm going to talk about their personal skill, their personal ability, the class tree that they have access to, and then a slight recommendation on what I would recommend you do with them in terms of the classes. I'm not an expert on all these units, I haven't used all of them, but just from the growths and my knowledge of the classes, I'll throw something out there. Don't take it too seriously, and if you have anything different or any other ideas, please let me know in the comments. There are 20 recruitable units in Dark Deity 2, you cannot miss a single one of them, and there's also a bonus spoiler character, which I will spoiler tag and remind you of once you reach near the end of the video. So, without further ado, we are going to start with our main character, Gwyn. Gwyn is the main character of this game. She's one of the first characters we get access to, and she has a 50% HP growth, 30% might, 25% speed, 20% dex, 25% defense, 20% fortitude, 25% mastery, and 20% luck. I'm also going to put all the growths on the left side of the screen, so if you don't want to listen to me or if you misheard them and you need to look at them visually, they will be there for you. And if somehow I make a mistake in what I'm saying, the right ones will always be on the screen. Anyways, Gwyn's growths are very well rounded. You can't really go wrong with what class you put her in. Obviously, she's got a little bit of an affinity towards might with decent speed and defense and mastery. Her personal skill is Ferocious Advance. Killing an enemy grants light block equal to 20% max HP to a maximum of 15. Her personal ability is Brutal Strike. It's just straight up damage. Attack dealing 24 additional. It tacks it on to whatever attack you're going to do. This is her class tree. I will save you guys the time, and I'm not going to go through every single class. That will be in a different video that we will upload maybe tomorrow or sometime later this week, maybe on the weekend. But in terms of classes, I went Gallant Elisant, and I found that to be very effective, but I think if I were to do this over, I would go Gallant Reaper. These are like some pretty high power killing classes for Gwyn, and they play on well with her strength. But you really can't go wrong with any of the second or the third tiers, except maybe Devoted. Devoted's terrible. Don't use that class. Next up on our list of recruitable characters is Riordan, another one of the people you get in Chapter 1. He's got 55% HP, 35% might, 15% speed, 10% dex, 25% fortitude, 25% defense, and 30% fortitude, 25% mastery, and 25% luck. Riordan's got a very might-heavy, defensiveness-heavy distribution with some decent mastery. His personal skill is Weapon Expert, which increases weapon stats by 20%, so these things over here. His personal skill is Command Wolf, which attacks with your pet, dealing 47 or whatever additional damage and removing up to X amount of defense from your enemy. This all depends on his base mastery. His class tree is this one. I like to call this the summoning class tree because you summon your additional monsters to help with your skills. Given his high might and high defenses, the two skill classes I would recommend are the Tamer Beastmaster and the Ranger Warden. These are both very defensive. This one depends on whether you want range, and this one depends on whether you want melee. Can't really go wrong. This one's 1-2 range. I liked it. I used it. It was pretty good. The third unit you are going to get is Arthur. Arthur is our stereotypical mage. He has 35% HP, 30% might, 25% speed, 20% dex, 15% defense, 30% fortitude, 40% mastery, and 15% luck. Arthur is meant to hit hard with abilities, and that 40% mastery is going to help with that, in addition to his personal skill, Celestial Affinity, which generates mana 25% faster, so you recover a little bit quicker and do damage a little bit quicker. His personal ability is Lunar Reeve. Send a bolt of magic at an enemy dealing X amount of damage, increased by mana spent in this chapter. Again, he regens mana, he has high mastery, he'll do more with skills, and this is his bread and butter nuke. The class tree he has access to is as follows. This is the Mage class tree, as I like to name it, and I went Cosmician just because I really liked the way it looks, honestly. And his mastery goes through the roof, and you get to nuke with Meteor, which, you know, if you've been around this channel, you would know why I would find this adequate. But I don't think you can go wrong with any of the classes for Arthur. It is really dealer's choice here. The fourth character you get also in Chapter 1 is Cassandra, and Cassandra is a personal favorite of mine. For any of you guys who've seen my video about the best builds, little plug for myself, look at the top right corner of your video or in the description, you will find them there. Highly recommended. It is a very fun video. I'm proud of it. Cassandra has 40% HP, 25% might, 30% speed, 15% dex, 10% defense, 25% fortitude, 30% mastery, and 25% luck. Kind of a well-rounded sort of spread. She can do well in most of the classes that you want to use her in. She has Dark Penchant, which restores 10 mana when an enemy within 2 tiles is defeated. It works for whether she kills it or an ally unit kills it. Her personal ability, Healing Touch, heals an ally for 53. I never used this because I made a Killing Machine Cassandra instead. I'm probably biased because I really like this build, but going Ritualist into Hemomancer for me was the best bang for your buck with Cassandra. It makes use of her decent might and high speed, and her defenses are paper thin anyway, so you're not going to make much use of them going in the tank class that this game tries to seduce you with. Don't fall for it. Go Ritualist Hemomancer. If you really don't want to, go some of these other ones. Don't go tank with Cassandra. The next unit on our list is Saxon, also a Chapter 1 recruit. His HP is 35%, 35% might, 20% speed, 15% dex, 35% defense, 15% fortitude, 30% mastery, and 10% luck. Saxon's a pretty good well-rounder. His speed is a little bit on the lower end, but not by too much. 20% is pretty respectable. He has the personal skill Storm Affinity, healing for 15% of max HP when using mana, so this is just free heals whenever you use your skills. His personal ability is Call of the Storm, deals up to 67 lightning damage spread equally to all enemies within 2 tiles, maximum of 41 each. This won't really kill anything in the mid to late game. It's a very expensive ability, and honestly, his other class abilities are going to be way more useful, so I don't really like this. In terms of class trees, by far and away, Monk into Ascendant, one of the most powerful class trees in the game. Again, mentioned in the video that I talked about with Cassandra, so look in the description if you want to see it. He goes hard. If you really don't want to do the melee one range class with him, you can go Conduit and Stormkeeper. This also plays on the ability use, and he has some pretty good mastery with it, so you can do either one of these. For Jill and Godfrost, it's a terrible class. I'll get into it in my next video, and Gale and Tempest is pretty average. So Monk Ascendant, Conduit, Stormkeeper for Saxon. Right after Saxon on the list is, and for those of you who had played Dark Deity 1, this is Alden. Alden returns, and he makes a pretty big return, honestly. 50% HP growth, 25% might, 20% speed, 10% dex, 25% defense, 25% fortitude, and 30% mastery, and 10% luck to round that out. Alden's a decent unit, again a well-rounder. You can go into any of the classes with him. I don't think there's one that's better than the other. His personal skill, Team Tactics, deals 2 additional damage for every status effect on an enemy. This is kinda It's not great. Some classes make better use of it than other. And his personal ability, Aura Wave, applies 13 heavy weak stack and 8 heavy vulnerable stacks to an enemy. It's a debuff. You're honestly probably not going to use this very much. He's going to be using other abilities from his other class trees. He's in the same class tree as Arthur, so if you want to see what these other ones are, you can refer to that section of the video again. After Alden is one of the fan favorites, Valeria. Now, I've built my Valeria a little bit different, but she can also be a very effective dodge tank, and her stats reflect that with 40% HP, 20% might, 30% speed, 30% dex, 15% defense, 30% fortitude, 30% mastery, and 5% luck. Her personal skill, power plus 15% while at full HP, fully emphasizes the dodge tank thing, and for some reason they gave her a personal ability of first aid to heal. Not really sure why they did that. It is nice in a pinch, especially in the early game, but you're also probably not going to find yourself using this very much. The class tree she has access to is the same one as Gwyn. She shows up as Nightblade and can go into Ankarant pretty effectively, but honestly she can use pretty much anything else. Seeker and Elisant has low speed growth, but the Reaper class is the one I found to be the most fun for a crit machine Valeria sort of deal. I found it very fun. Next one on the list is a familiar face that you might remember from Dark Deity 1, except this time it is Benji III, son of Benji II, the guy that we saw in Dark Deity 1, and his growths are 40% HP, 40% might, 10% speed, 15% dex, 35% defense, 25% fortitude, 5% mastery, and 30% luck. This Benji is all about bashing and taking in the damage with high might, high defenses, and his builds will show that. Head of Steam attacks increase power by 8% for 2 turns, max 40% capitalizes on that very high might, and for some reason he's got a support skill as his personal ability, Second Wind, heal for 7 damage, increased by damage done this chapter. I'm assuming this is going to play on the fact that he's going to do more damage and so be able to heal himself a little bit more. I didn't really use Benji, so I would be really curious to hear what you guys think. His class tree, again, the same as Gwyn and Valeria. I think for him, a nice class could also be the Reaper class, but Gallant into Champion would play on the strengths of his high might and high defenses. Next unit on the list is Zanele, our first elf, and she has some great offensive growths with 35% HP, 25% might, 25% speed, 30% dex, 15% defense, 25% fortitude, 40% mastery, and 10% luck. Zanele's also kind of an all-rounder. She can go into any class. I kept her in her personal class until tier 3 where I switched to Slayer because that felt more in line with her growths a little bit. Her personal skill Animal Friend increases command pet damage by 25%, which goes along with her monstrous 40% growth in mastery, which is similar to that of Arthur. She wants to use her abilities and use them very well she will. Along with this, it'll boost them even more. And in addition to that, we have the personal ability, Command Capuchin, attack with your pet, dealing 34 additional damage and stealing X amount of gold if foe is killed. This will be your bread and butter. It'll be boosted by this skill. It'll be boosted by her mastery. And, it's just going to do a lot of damage and give you some money. The class tree she has, the same one as Riordan. She started in Quick Draw and I went into Slayer, but I really don't think you can go wrong with any of these, except maybe Warden. She doesn't have quite the defenses, and Beastmaster as well. I think Deadeye is pretty okay if you want to stay and do some nuke damage with some distance, but I went Slayer for the 1-2 range as well as Ricochet. An attack has 20% chance to hit again. I feel like that was pretty effective for me. Now the unit after this one is none other than Khamari, and this is where we start to see a little bit of confusion in terms of the base classes they come in, because I think Khamari is very discordant with the Ritualist class. He has growths of 50% HP, 25% might, 20% speed, 15% dex, 30% defense, 35% fortitude, 15% mastery, and 15% luck. His personal skill is fortitude plus 25%, and his personal ability is Quick Stitching, which heals 3 allies in a line for 23, applies 3 light bleed stacks if heal isn't to full HP. Now, one would think that he would make use of this light bleed status with the Ritualist class, but given his growth distribution with his high defense and fortitude as well as his personal skill, he has the same class tree as Cassandra does. I think Khamari is an easy juggernaut here. Look at those growths, 55% in both of defense and fortitude, with some decent might and some good HP, and that'll get upgraded further when he becomes the Juggernaut class upgrade. I really don't see a reason to leave him in Ritualist, and if I'm going to try and use him in a subsequent playthrough, I'm going to go down the Juggernaut chain. I think that'll be highly effective in him. Of course, Wave Seer is always a good support class, and Elementalist is manageable too. He doesn't lose too much, but I think if you really want to capitalize on him, go Juggernaut. It's going to really boost his strengths. All right, halfway through the cast, and we are now going to see Zuhair, who is honestly an interesting unit, and I need to sit down and study him more, so if you've used him, please let me know how you're using him. His growths are 50% HP, 25% might, 20% speed, 25% dex, 10% defense, 30% fortitude, 35% mastery, and 20% luck. The real interesting thing about Zuhair is his personal skill, Dancer's Grace, which is just a flat movement +1, which really gives him some extra mobility, and we all know in a strategy RPG, mobility is pretty key. His personal ability is Spin Partner, swaps place with a unit, applying 4 light wheat stacks if they are an enemy. This is also really nifty, because you can kind of just ping in enemies, maybe even bosses, swap positions with them, and get them killed by the rest of your party while he jumps ahead a little bit. This can also be used to retreat if he really wants to, or swap with another ally to make them more convenient. So I think Zuhair, with his movement, with this Spin Partner skill, is going to be very interesting. In terms of his class tree, he has the same one as Saxon, and like we said, Monk is always a no-brainer for these, and Conduit is very powerful too. With his high mastery, he will be able to do high damage with his abilities. I would recommend Monk or Conduit. I'm going to sound like a broken record for any unit with these combo. Fragilin is a terrible class, or at least I haven't figured out how to use it well, so if you have, again, let me know in the comments. After Zuhair is Eve, who is a fan favorite. She is the dodge and crit tank that everyone seems to be using. Her growths are 40% HP, 20% might, 35% speed, 25% dex, 10% defense, 15% fortitude, 15% mastery, and 40% luck. You really want to play on Eve's strengths, which are that high speed and high luck, and there's no better than the class she comes in, the Cutthroat class. Look at that 70% HP, 60% luck growth, absolutely insane. With the 50% dexterity, we'll guarantee that she stacks up that crit, that dodge, that accuracy that you really want her to have. And in addition to that is her personal skill efficiency, power +1 for every 10% accuracy or every 10 accuracy above 100, and she will get that with those growths. Her personal ability, Command Cobra, is a very interesting one. Attack with your pet, dealing 8 additional damage and removing up to 6 fortitude from your enemy. Kind of an odd one, given that she's usually in a physical class and the class trees that she has access to don't really do magic damage. So I wonder what they were trying to get up to with this one. But the one that's really interesting is actually Licky Lasso, and that's a class skill, so we'll go over it later. The class tree she has access to, like we talked about, is the same one that Riordan has. So again, if you want to see those classes, him and Zanele, you can go back to any one of those ones in the video that we're seeing. After Eve, we have a utility unit that has been a personal favorite of mine, Haoran. Haoran has a stat distribution of 30% HP, 35% might, 15% speed, 30% dex, 25% defense, 25% fortitude, 40% mastery, and 5% luck. Again, we're seeing that massive mastery that all of the utility units or ability spamming units want to see, with some high might as well. The speed is low, so I wouldn't go a damage dealing build with this guy. In terms of personal ability or personal skill, he has healing effects on allies, grant 2 mastery for 4 turns, stacking. So you really want to be healing with him to make use of this. And his personal ability, Mists of Renewal, wrap an ally in mist, healing them for 24 every turn for 2 turns, means that you can utilize that personal skill as much as you want, regardless of the class you're using. Having said that, this is the class tree that he has access to, and I think this Hunter x Hunter reference of Tidecaller is really quite the good class for Haoran. This is what I use, this is what I really like. He's not really fast enough to utilize Ritualist, and he might honestly not be a bad Juggernaut or Dreadnought because his defensive growths are pretty good, but in terms of his mastery, these 2 classes will make the most use of it in terms of his support utility, or even as a skill spamming Elementalist. I think he could be pretty good there. Just not really in the Ritualist side. After Haoran, we have a personal favorite of mine, Mashal. Mashal has an extremely good offensive spread of growths with 30% HP, 30% might, 30% speed, 30% dex, 25% defense, and then 15% in fortitude, mastery, and luck. If it wasn't obvious, they really want you to go in all on offense with Mashal. And if you can, dodge and hit and crit as much as possible, because her personal skill is Noble Effect, which gains 15 dodge and 15 accuracy when an enemy is a lower level, so you want her to be higher level than the enemies, and you get some free stats, which is always nice. Her personal ability, Flame Infusion, gains an X amount of crit, but lose 15 mana when critting. Deactivating when depleted, casting again deactivates. This one is kind of odd. I didn't really use it much, honestly, because you're just going to mana drain, and if you go into the classes that you really want to go into for her, it'll be better for her to just be using those abilities. I tried to go down the Gale route with her, and honestly, it really didn't go that great. I didn't use any of these skills very much, and she ended up being a buffer with Swift Winds to most other people, increasing their movement. If I was to redo this, again, I told you I was going to sound like a broken record, but I would go down Monk Ascendant for her because she makes very, very strong use of it. Look at those growths. 55 might, 60 speed, 60 dexterity. She's just going to be off the charts with the offense, and she isn't going to care about the defense because of Divine Flow. If you want to see that build, again, the video that I referenced earlier will show you how to make one of the best Monk builds and Ascendant builds in the game. She probably also could do pretty well in Stormkeeper or Conduit, but I haven't tried that. I like Monk and Ascendant too much to do that, but maybe in another playthrough. I'll try the Magic class. I like the sprite. It's pretty cool. After Mashal, we have our first mage in a very long time, as long as since we got Alden, I think, and that is Aya. Aya is our offensive mage distribution build with 30% HP, 35% might, 30% speed, 25% dex, 5% in both defense and fortitude. You really don't want this girl to get hit. 25% in mastery, and 35% in luck. Honestly, again, with these mage classes, they're all interchangeable. I went full support with her, and I didn't really use her for much attacking, but you can do whatever the hell you want with her. It sounds like they want you to go down the Warlock line because she makes use of this personal skill, Demon Blood. Bleed, Poison, Blind, and Weak's effects are reversed, and her personal ability, Demonic Call, absorbs bleed and poison stacks from all allies within 3 tiles, plus 10 light stacks of each. So she's going to debuff herself, she's going to reverse that, and she will do a ton of damage. Because again, poison will increase your stats, bleed will heal you, blind will increase your accuracy, and weak will strengthen your defenses. So if all of these effects are reversed, she's just going to be a cracked unit that is going to dish out a lot of damage. Like we said, these are the class trees that are granted to her, and if you really want to do damage, the Warlock and Necromancer classes are probably the best bet for her. She can explode with Poison Nova and then reabsorb it with her personal skills, and you are absolutely stacked for the rest of the chapter, or however long those are going to last. The one class you probably don't want to go into is the Aegis and Relic Knight classes. Her defenses really aren't high enough to make use of those nice class-based defensive buffs. And then Geomancer and Cosmician is very ability-based, and her mastery is 65%, which is not bad, but honestly, she's just going to be better here with those offenses. Scholar is poorly supported, so it doesn't really make sense. So again, Warlock, Necromancer for her, you're just going to do a lot of damage. Next up on the list is our first Orc, Tusk. And Tusk is the embodiment of tank and spank. 70% HP, 40% might, 20% speed, 25% dex, 30% defense, 0% fortitude, 10% mastery, and 15% luck. He's really not going to be doubling much. He's going to be hitting hard, taking physical damage, and have a lot of HP. His dex also isn't bad, so he is going to have a decent crit rate, and he's probably not going to miss very much. His personal skill, Brute Strength, ignores weapon weight. This is huge if you keep him in the Axe class. These are the heaviest skills, or heaviest weapons in the game, and not having to deal with weapon weight not only leaves an extra free slot in terms of the Axe or weapon enhancements that you can use, but also lets you give an additional weapon skill there to utilize and create more power. His class tree is going to be the same as Riordan, and for this one, I would honestly also recommend either Tamer for him, or just keep him in the Ranger class to make use of that juicy 100% HP growth that is only going to get better, and look at that 60% defense and 65% might. None of those other classes, except maybe Quick Draw, compare, and he honestly gets some decent offenses with Quick Draw. This might be a little bit of an underrated build for him, the Quick Draw build. I might have to try that my next playthrough. But yeah, can't go wrong with Ranger. This is actually a pretty good class for him, and will let him tank pretty good. After Tusk and continuing our Orc adventures is Laurai. Laurai is an interesting one because she has a 60% HP growth, 30% might and speed, 25% dex, 30% defense, 0% fortitude, 15% mastery, and 10% luck. She comes in the Elementalist class, which I kind of get. The offenses are good with her growths, but that mastery growth is abysmal for her, especially in a class that wants you to spam abilities. Laurai has the same class tree as Cassandra, and honestly, with those offenses, if you haven't made use of Cassandra yet, Laurai can do that job pretty well. She's got higher HP growth than Cassandra does. She's got higher might growth and the same speed. And she'll have the defense to tank a little bit, and honestly, those mastery and luck stats don't really matter that Cassandra has. So I would actually be in favor of going the Ritualist route as well as Hemomancer with Laurai, or you can go Waveseer and I forget what the name of the class that comes after it is. Juggernaut is also not terrible for her. She'll have good defense for it, and the HP growth and the might are decent, but she won't make use of it because the fortitude is low, so she's not going to be a universal tank. So if you want to do that, again, similar to Cassandra, I would go Ritualist, Hemomancer, or Waveseer, but maybe not Waveseer so much because her mastery, like I said, is low. So Ritualist actually is probably her best class. I realize I didn't talk about her personal skill, Ancestral Rage. Gain 8% power for every enemy within 2 tiles. So you really want to be in the midst of the enemy, and that means that Ritualist is even better for her. Empowering Edict is her class ability, and that heals an ally for 22, applying 14 light block if it doesn't heal to full. I think this is whatever. It's really, really not that great, especially if you end up going down the Ritualist class for her, which I would definitely recommend. And now we get into some of the super late game recruits. These are like, not necessarily spoilerish, but I guess they're like your late game crutch units. And the first one that you get access to is Tal'Dera. Tal'Dera comes in at level 30, so she's immediately ready to go and promote to 3rd tier. She has some monstrous base stats and some pretty decent growths to back that up too. She's got 20% HP, 40% might, 25% speed, 40% dex, 5% in defense and fortitude, 10% mastery, and 40% luck. She's a great unit, but honestly, by the time you get her, your team is probably locked in at that point, to be real with you. Magnum Opus is her skill, crits restore 10 mana, and her ability Steal the Stage reduces the speed of every enemy within 2 tiles by 7 for 1 turn. I don't like this ability. I think it's pretty bad. For the cost that you're going to use, some of the other abilities are just way, way better. In terms of her class trees, again, it's the same as Saxon, and they want to try and encourage you to use the Conduit and Stormkeeper classes. I honestly don't think that Flux Overload is really enough to increase her crit that much because it's gone by the time you get the next crit. I think if you really want a crit class, yeah, maybe Gale and Tempest isn't that great either. Monk Ascendant for her is going to be incredible. I mean, look at those growths. Again, 65, 55, 70. Mastery is 40, luck is 45. It's not bad. So she can absolutely make use of the Monk class. She comes at level 30. She's ready to go straight into it. And Monk gives you Charged Ki, which will boost that speed, so she won't have that much trouble doubling. And you've already got the high might and dexterity and HP, so she's going to go into Ascendant, and she's going to do just fine. Again, broken record, but this class chain is just nuts. Or you can keep her in Conduit and Stormkeeper. I personally wouldn't. After Tal'Dera, we have one of our mini spoiler recruits, because technically he comes as an enemy unit and then joins us, but that is Vissarion. And Vissarion has 60% HP, 25% might, 15% speed, 30% dex, 35% defense, 5% fortitude, 40% mastery, and 10% luck. I honestly have no idea what Vissarion is trying to do. His growths are all over the place. He has terrible offensive growths all around. His defensive ones aren't anything to write home about either. And the only thing that's impressive is his mastery, but he's in a class tree that doesn't really make use of it. His personal skill, Firm Resolve, is defense and fortitude increased as HP decreases up to 30%, and his personal ability, Command, grants an ally 12 defense and fortitude for 1 turn. It feels like he's trying to be a support unit. He starts off in the Devoted role, which again is a support unit, but honestly, given his growths, I mean, I would just go Gallant and Champion and try and buff up that defense and might and HP as much as I can. He's really going to be using his abilities to buff the enemies most of the time, and with his low speed, he's probably not going to be doubling anyways, and so increasing that power with Titanic is probably a good idea. Other than that, I mean, you could go Seeker and Elisant. It's not bad for him, and it still gives him decent might and defense, but I don't know. I wouldn't use this unit. He's pretty bad, honestly, and by the time you get him, you'll have so many better units that, unless you really love him and want to go Gallant and Champion, for me, I just ignored him. But again, feel free to correct me and tell me I'm wrong in the comments. I always want to see new, fresh, and interesting builds. All right, 2 more to go. After Vissarion is our last of the 20, and that is Calith. And she is also an elf. It looks like a dark elf as well, and she starts out in the Geomancer class. Her growths are 40% HP, 25% might, 20% speed, 35% dex, 15% defense, 20% fortitude, 15% mastery, and 35% luck. I really don't know what Calith is trying to do. It's kind of a theme with these last 3 where they're like tagged on in the late game. They don't really have any one specific weighting. Their growths are kind of all over the place, so it's hard to really say. And, well, I mean, I guess I'll just jump into her skill. Her personal skill, Light Absorption. Blind stacks within 2 tiles, increase defense and fortitude by 0.1. Honestly, not that crazy. Crystal Refraction is her ability, which applies 27 stacks of heavy blind to 3 random enemies within 2 tiles. So it's there just to justify Light Absorption. And honestly, I think you're going to get more bang for your buck using other things, because the class tree she comes with is the Mage class tree. And there's a lot of utility here. I mean, especially if you go Scholar or Lore Master, you're just going to be using Phase, and you're going to be, doing a bunch of support stuff. Geomancer or Cosmician really want to just nuke, and her mastery is decent in this class because everyone's is, but it's not high enough to utilize it like Arthur does. Warlock and Necromancer could be interesting, but her personal ability and skill just do not make use of it. And, Aegis and Relic Knight, she has decent defenses, but not high enough to state, I'm going to put her in this class and she's going to do some damage. She won't be optimal here. I just think she's an oddly balanced unit, oddly designed unit. Her personal skill and ability don't really coordinate with anything here very well, so unless you really love her, I would again just bench this unit. But like I said with the previous two, please let me know what you did with her and show me, because I need to be educated here. Alright, so with the 20 out of the way, now is time for the very final unit. Consider this your spoiler warning, you have been warned. The last unit that we are going to is none other than Irving. The hero from our first game. Irving returns in this game as a very, very late recruit, the last unit that you will recruit in the game, and honestly, a pretty damn good one. Irving's growths are immensely optimized with 55% HP, 35% might, 10% speed, 15% dex, 30% defense and fortitude, 15% mastery, and 20% luck. This screams tank build, but it can also make use of the archer class very nicely here. So let's go through things. His personal skill, Unstoppable. Killing an enemy grants +6 defense and fortitude until next turn. If you are tanking with him, he is going to get even tankier after killing, and honestly, if you're using any class, he'll appreciate the extra bulk, especially because his base stats are so damn high. His personal ability is Command Wolf. This one is similar to his son's, Riordan. I guess he taught him everything he knew. He attacks with a pet, dealing X amount of additional damage and removing some defense from your enemy. Again, it just lets him hit even harder. The class tree is in is the same one as Gwyn. So the skill is the same as Riordan, the class tree is the same as Gwyn. He taught something to each one of the kids, and he comes in the champion or gallant class. I think he actually comes as a tier 3. So you'll have to side promote him. And I think you can keep him in the champion class and he'll do just fine, and those defenses will be pretty well optimized. Or you can go Elisant, which is only slightly weaker in the might department and slightly weaker in the defense department and HP department, but gets absolutely stronger in almost every other stat across the board. And he can make use of some of those bows that let you double regardless at a little bit less might, and he will do very well in that class. He might not be able to attack, but he gets the magical attribute, and he'll be able to full draw and fire off shots from pretty far away. I really like the Elisant class for Irving, honestly. The other two, not so much. I mean, I guess he could probably do pretty good in Reaper, but I didn't try that. But Champion and Elisant, they just go so well and so synergistically with what he wants to do. So yeah, that wraps up all of my unit recruitment guide and videos. We will come back with a class breakdown video next. It's currently 1 a.m. where I am, and it's super late, and I need to be up for work in a few hours. So I hope you guys appreciated that video, and if it helped you, leave a like. Please subscribe and stay tuned for some more videos. I've got a few more decent Dark Deity 2 ones coming out on the horizon. So stay tuned, and I'll see you all in a next video very soon. Peace.